A stalemate grips Somalia. The deadline for elections has come and gone. The president's term is over, and the opposition no longer recognizes his authority. So who is in charge? I'm Abdi Aynte, and today's Newsmaker is Somalia's political deadlock. There is serious political tension in Somalia, with Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, better known as President Farmajo, still in power more than a week after his mandate expired. An election expected in December never happened, and efforts to switch to a transitional government have failed. Now, Farmajo's administration says they're preventing a dangerous power vacuum by staying in office. But the opposition claims the president is illegally holding on to power.
We no longer recognize Farmajo as president. His term has ended, and he is not only an obstacle to the nation, but to national elections as well. He couldn't reach a deal with regional leaders because he left the meeting on the elections. He can no longer be in charge as his tenure is over.
Well, the United Nations has urged all parties to return to the negotiating table and find a compromise. And according to one government official, that is exactly what's been happening. Somalia's Foreign Minister, Mohamed Abdirizak, says all parties have now agreed on the remaining issues, and in just a few days' time, a new election will be scheduled. I spoke to the minister earlier and began by asking his opinion on why it's taken this long to organize a vote.
It's actually not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of fact that the government, federal government of Somalia, has been doing its best to organize an election, but that election has to be agreed with the federal member states, which have been so reluctant to stick to the agreement that they signed. Prior to that, in 2018, the federal government of Somalia signed an agreement with the federal member states, which stipulated an election that is one person, one vote. But right now, some details need to be ironed out, and I'm glad to report that as of last night, the federal member states and the federal government have agreed on the remaining issues. So this should pave the way for elections taking place within a set timetable.
Okay. As of last night, you say this agreement was reached. This almost would seem reason to celebrate, because this has been months of political turmoil and fears that the country could descend into a very dangerous state of instability. Can you promise me, guarantee me, that this has now happened and that the country can move forward and an election that is agreeable to everybody will take place?
Yeah, so what has happened is now at a technical level, both people representing the federal government and those representing the federal member states have made this agreement. What we are awaiting is within a day or two to have the principals, the leadership, that's the president and the heads of the federal member states, to meet and finally sign that agreement. Okay.
You know, I have to address, though, what your critics have said, the opposition effectively in Somalia. They say all of this really has been a cynical effort on behalf of your president and the administration to force a more centralized system of government, because your president in particular sees state leaders as political rivals rather than partners in governance. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, in an election year, a lot of accusations and labeling will go on, but facts are facts. And I can tell you that myself, I believe in the Constitution of Somalia, which stipulates federalism. This president was sworn in on the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Somalia. And essentially, I support, federalism system of government. So that train has left the station a long time ago. What we need to discuss is to have serious discussions on political settlement questions as to how we organize our federation. Who has responsibilities for what? What are the fiscal responsibilities? And, regarding resources sharing, what are the executive powers? What are the states' rights? And this is something that could take, a long time. How do we organize? One of those settlement questions is predictable timetable for elections in every 4 years. And so far, it is the federal government who has that responsibility. But if every time the federal member states are going to put a roadblock to stop it until they get the concessions they want, or in this case, take us back to 2016, then it's not helpful. So what we're talking about is really facts. The opposition have their right to criticize the government. It only makes us, act even better. But
okay,
those are the facts.
Because, I mean, as you say, facts are facts.
It's not about a situation of...
Right, as you say,
yes.
Facts are facts. The opposition says, no, it's not about facts. This is about your cynical political maneuvering. And they even say you have created this problem that some are labeling a political interest, or impasse rather, to serve your interests. And now you want to play part in solving the problem. And the opposition, understandably, doesn't trust you because they believe this was a political ploy to create this situation so that you could place yourself in a more powerful position. They're not alone. They actually have foreign analysts as well that agree that that's the case.
Yeah, I'm very well familiar with all the analysts, but here's the thing. Elections have consequences. The federal government wanted to have an election all along. And, it's not a matter of trusting or not trusting. There is going to be a contest, and the contest will have winners or losers. But at the end of the day, Somalia has to win. Our democracy has to be deepened, and we have to move forward. Labeling each other is not a solution. And so what I'm talking about is the facts on record that how the federal government tried to organize a one-person, one-vote to afford the Somali public the opportunity to choose their leaders, both representatives in the federal parliament in its two chambers, as well as the president. And this was rejected in 2018 by the federal member states. So this is the fact.
Another fact, though, on the ground is that in spite of promises made by your president that al-Shabaab would at least be diminished, if not defeated, during his 4 years in office and the years of your administration. It was a platform that your president stood on for election, and now they are saying you were actually so consumed by undermining the power of the federal states and that you dropped the ball on al-Shabaab, and now that has led to even greater instability in the country. Tell me what you believe is the state of al-Shabaab at this point and what it will mean going into another election.
Andrea, al-Shabaab is an enemy that keeps changing and adapting. Al-Shabaab, we have to confront and fight with al-Shabaab in various ways. Right now, prevention and countering violent extremism should be employed as a way of fighting with al-Shabaab. But al-Shabaab, the days of threatening the existence of a Somali government is over. They do not have a standing army that can threaten the Somali state. What they're resorting to is assassinations, extortion of money from public in the areas that is not fully under the government's control. It is about detonating IEDs, those sorts of things. And those, again, it is so much different than what it was previously. So today, al-Shabaab, yes, continues to be a threat, but it is declining. It is authority and power.
Okay. You know, you've been saying, in spite of all the political turmoil, all the difficulty, the failure to hold the election when promised, that still you are more optimistic about the future of your country than you've been in years. Why so?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a dawn for Somalia. We are paying today taxes. And as a result, the federal government of Somalia in the last 4 years has been paying salaries of the government and the security forces on time. This is the first time you can say this in so many years. On time. Salaries have been paid every single time. The Somali government has been able to meet all the conditions, all the technical conditions required for the debt relief, and showing that corruption is down, that we're meeting our responsibilities, we're exercising financial responsibilities, fiscal responsibilities. And so this gives me hope, and it should give hope to every Somali. There's a reform of the security forces. We are training, we are preparing for eventually assuming responsibility. We are here, for example, to have meaningful discussions with troop contributing countries. We are going to be in the leadership for taking our responsibility and dealing this with this AMISOM and troop contributing countries. We are sitting at the table. We are in fact leading. So these are things that will give us more hope for Somalia.
Mohamed Abdirizak.
Mentioned too.
Mohamed Abdirizak, thank you so much for joining us and spending this time with us on the Newsmakers. We appreciate it. Well, as you heard there, the foreign minister says there has been a breakthrough in Somalia's political impasse. So let's see what our panel makes of that and other issues. Joining us from Mogadishu, Hodan Isse. She was the First Lady of the Puntland state and former board member of the Central Bank of Somalia. And in Ankara, we have Abdi Aynte. He was a senior advisor to President Farmajo and the former Minister of Planning and Economic Promotion. Thanks both so much for joining us. Abdi Aynte, let me start with you. Have you heard that an agreement has been reached? The minister said that actually just last night, all parties involved agreed on the remaining issues and an election will now be scheduled.
Indeed, there is a talk of a breakthrough, a technical breakthrough at that. It must be highlighted. I think the political dialogue remains among the principles, and that is a welcome news because we have been in political limbo now for some time in relations to the federal elections. And if indeed an agreement was reached at the technical level, and the principals are able to overcome their challenges, that's the political leaders of the country in their next meeting in the coming few days, I think the country will go into an election. But I think it has to be said that this was a, man-made crisis. We did not need to go into this electoral impasse for this long had it not been, I think, the intransigence of all parties, but principally the federal government in Mogadishu.
Okay, so you see the responsibility really among the opposition. Let me put that to Hodan Isse then. I mean, the suspicion is that the government actually, the suspicion is by the opposition that the government indeed, not the federal states, created this impasse, to show that power does need to be centralized in order to maintain stability and that they are best equipped to lead. Hodan, do you feel there's any truth to that?
Well, definitely it's the government's responsibility to ensure that the country is stable. And it's not only the federal government, it's also the regional states. I think the reason we have the impasse for a long time, as Aynte said, I agree with Aynte, it was a man-made, the responsibility for 8 men to come together to lead the country into fair and free election. It rests on their shoulder. So there always has to be someone who will be taking responsibility for all this mayhem. I mean, absolutely, it's been for a long time. It's been a long time since we were expecting something good to come out. and go to the next level. So I think the blame is maybe, in my opinion, when there is no set of rules or constitution or even conflict mitigating mechanism like constitutional court, and everybody thinks their side is correct, you will see this sort of things. And even now you were talking about whether the government is legal or illegal. You will see two parties having a different opinion on it. So unless there is some set of rules, legal rules, or constitution that is well defined, that cannot be, anyone can just take it the way they wanted it. So because of it, I think, in my opinion, because it lacks rules, and it lacks, and also it lacks political consensus, which is what we've seen in 2016, that has actually handicapped the whole process. But I'm very happy to, like Aynte said, to welcome whatever that might be, whatever it's worth, that something good came out from Baydhabo meeting, and we will see that how that will be implemented. Implementation is yet to be determined.
Right. So hold on, let me just clarify. I mean, we know there hasn't been an official announcement. The foreign minister said, just wait, in a few days we will hear that an election is to come. But Hodan, you sound confident as well that there was likely some sort of breakthrough then behind the scenes, and we will see Somalia move forward in the coming days.
Well, we are tired, and we are Somalis. We care about the fate of this country, and we're sick and tired of having this will cause instability, and everybody is worried. So anyone who is concerned Somali is expecting something good will come out of it. It's been too long. It was unnecessary. I do believe it's, like Aynte said, man-made. So we are hoping that they will come. This man will come to their sense and will lead the way for free and fair elections.
Right.
I'm hopeful. I haven't seen the details of it, but I'm hopeful. If it doesn't make sense for the impasse we've been experiencing for the past few months. So it just makes common sense, and we're hopeful, and we hope that something good will come out, even though we haven't seen the details.
It's so good to hear your optimism. And speaking of optimism, I want to pick up where the foreign minister actually left off in that interview, and that sincere optimism he expressed, because he says Somalia has gotten better. There is a functioning civil service. Taxes are being collected. Employees are getting paid on time. Are we missing what's happening on the ground in Somalia, in that people's daily lives have improved in spite of this current political wrangling we're seeing at the moment? Abdi, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the way I would frame it is that we have been on an upward positive trajectory for 20 years now. There has been an incremental, if slow, progress that has been going on for some time. There is no doubt about that. And every administration that was coming to power was actually adding something to the previous one. I do, however, need to say that the progress that was expected from the current administration over the past 4 years was dismally worse than most people were hoping for, mainly because the political capital with which the current administration came to power was so enormous in 2017 that they could have translated that into tangible or much stronger progress on the ground. Now, if you look at all of the indices, for example, on the security front, while I agree with the minister that al-Shabaab, for example, no longer poses an existential threat to the existence of the federal government, it does continue to effectively and systemically undermine peace building and state building in the country. And it's actually collecting equally, more money, if not, or equally as the same amount of money as the government. And that is a very tragic situation, because we've been fighting al-Shabaab for 10 years. More importantly, on the political front, the last few years have been animated by a breakdown of what is known as the Elite Compact. That is this informal agreement that essentially brought the Somali political elite and political leaders together, which they protected largely by having an electoral processes, transferring of power, and so on and so forth. That actually broke down over the past 4 years. And that's mainly because the government's strong hands on manipulating local elections across the country in 5 different federal member states. So I think we need to look at that angle as well as a positive angle, which there is one.
Okay, Hodan, I'd like to get your take on that. I mean, there has over the last 20 years or so, there has been progress, but have the last 3 years or so been somewhat of a disappointment then to you and what was squandered?
I think it's a stylized fact that Somalia is emerging from unresolved long-term violent and non-violent conflict that is troubling, destructive, and recurring. While progress has been made in some areas, the issue, as has been said many times, of transitional justice, reconciliation, and even moving beyond that, we have taken a federalism system is lacking. It's been a long time ago now, almost 8 years, where many years, in fact, that we have picked up the model of federalism. We have not yet determined, after all these years, that what model of federalism worked for Somalia. And I think it's not accidental. I think it's by intention. And also all the, of course, there are 5 federal member states that's been established, but there is no rule, there is no constitution, there is no method of resource sharing, there is no model that works for Somali culture, its background of having a civil war for that long. So yes, well, there is some progress that is tangible. I think some time has been wasted in order to unpack. We put all our eggs in the political basket. We could have, in my opinion, post-conflict economic reconstruction could have been side by side implemented, and people will be employed, youth. We have a lot of unemployed youth that are troublesome. And there are a lot of poverty in the country. So I'm not saying, apart from the fact that the country is emerging and there are some positive signs, I think there is some low-hanging fruit that hasn't been utilized.
Okay, Abdi, I see you can agree. If you can respond to that and also help us understand how much the lines drawn by different tribes and clans are actually hindering political process here. How much is that factoring in right now?
Well, I think the days of reducing the issues and conflict in Somalia to a competition among clans are over. In fact, if you look at the current political dynamic of the country, it's really not animated by clans competing or another. I think what's important to highlight here is, as Dr. Hodan mentioned, if you look at the core political as well as the constitutional order of the country, we are still in transition mode. Our constitution remains in provision now for well over 12 years. Our federal structure is yet to be agreed, including resource sharing. We are still unable to organize one person, one vote elections. We've been now having these indirect elections for 20 years. And our national security architecture remains deeply divided, whereby federal member states are essentially providing security and are defending the country, and we don't have a very strong national army that everyone can rally around. Okay. So in many ways, while there is an overall progress in the peace building, we're still very much behind on the key tasks that we need to finish.
Understood. Abdi, forgive me for interrupting, but I just have a few minutes left, and we need to also address a very significant issue in Somalia, and something that is very close, obviously, to Hodan Isse's heart. It is the role of women in the Somali government, and the number of women you want to see increased, and their participation in forging a path forward for the country. Tell me where it stands today and how much still needs to be done, really, to integrate women in government and make sure that they do receive the representation they deserve.
I definitely think that women deserve more than they have right now. It's been a struggle that went on for a long time, but you know that lack of peace and security disproportionately impacts women, children, and youth. However, they are excluded from the decision-making table even though they play an important role in peace building. Right now, what you see is, you can see from what you see, all the pictures, whether they are government officials or whether they are opposition groups, you will see none, no women. But Somali women are more than 51% of the population. When you see poverty, when you see the petty trade, those who are working hard to put kids to school, that's all women. So it's very disappointing to see that women have to beg to be part of the government. Now there is a 30% quota, which I think we could also ask for more. That's been on since 2012. It's time to, now we worried in 2016, 24% of that 30% has been achieved, but now we worried because there's no mechanism or strategy or enforcement that's in place. At least in 2016, there was some points where that was enforceable, but now we don't know. So I was told today there is, we were trying to work very hard to see if we can,
certainly.
In fact, but I was told today, even though the information is not very clear yet, that there is an element that's there that I don't know if it guarantees or if it's a mere mention that remains to be seen, but we are working very hard, but we have no mechanism, nor we are sitting, we are on the seat where decisions are made.
I will have to give you the last word there. We're actually over time for this edition of the Newsmakers. Abdi Aynte, also thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for watching as well. We'll see you tomorrow.